And when you're ahead, you need to be really punishing your opponents for being behind.
Yeah.
So
Good
all those
stuff,
things
man.
need to be taken into account
Yeah,
when you're playing.
sometimes, like you said before, like sometimes the you learn more from these more adverse situations than you do when cards are coming pretty easily and the plays are easy.
Yep.
Okay, well, you know, I guess you learn a little bit when you innervate coin Yeti too.
Or when you have big game hunter in your opening hand every single game.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so I mean, innervate Yeti is an obvious one.
Yep.
What about this? I mean, okay, so turn one will probably be this innervate coin Yeti, but kind of going along the lines of what we've been doing today, which is like really thinking about possibly unorthodox plays. Do we consider turn 2 and 3 at all in this mulligan or no?
I would definitely be pitching back the Druid of the Claw, the big game hunter,
Okay.
because your context has changed. Like once you have innervate, it's fine to keep Yeti,
Yeah.
but you're still fishing for innervate and wild growth.
All right. Here we go. Okay.
This is actually one of those spots where you're not going to play turn one Yeti.
Yeah.
You're actually going to play turn two Yeti and turn three Yeti.
Yeah. That's kind of good. That's kind of good that we mulliganed that so that we could discuss that. Very, very good point there. We can innervate out.
Okay, now that we have the
Yeti.
ancient lore, I like turn three Argent Commander. The plan is still the same. I don't think there's a single turn that can change your plan right now.
People probably were thinking you were serious there. All right, turn 2 Yeti.
Yeah, Chill and Yeti for sure. And then followed by another
And
Chill and
Jeffrey-
Yeti. This is going to be a really tough game for well innervated.
Well innervated.
Well innervated
This-
ChanManV.
this
This
is
is
what-
the beauty of playing Druid is when we get to
We've-
just slap our opponent around with giant Chill and Yetis.
We've been down the barrels of the darkness. Now we're
Whoa, hang on.
Oh,
That
actually-
might change things.
yeah. I think so.
4 or 5. How valuable is this coin? Gosh dang it, we have to replay every single turn for the
We
rest
don't
of the
even
game
need
now.
the coin. That's the funny part. Getting the ancient allure, I think, would be better on turn 6, actually.
Probably. Or just the potential to play whatever we want. Yeah, I like Harvest Golem here.
Yeah.
What a weird spot to be in.
What a good spot to be in. Every single draw ends up potentially changing our decision.
Yeah, but who likes decisions? Yeah, so discussing it, the coin gives us a greater flexibility here, and that's really all we're looking for.
And this is nice too because it draws out the swipe, and then Chouanyani's gonna be even stronger.
Yeah, I would just continue to ignore. If he wants to hero power, let him hero power because it makes him skip his turn 5.
Yeah. All right, Yeti. I guess there was some consideration for Azure Drake there, but Yeti's gonna be stronger here.
Where shall I strike?
All right. Well.
Get in there, Argent Commander.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good thing we saved the coin now. Matter where I put this, actually.
In our particular deck, not very, but I would tend to put it on the left.
Left. Okay.
I tend to habit someone on the left, so that way, like when I play Shaman and I Flame Tongue Totem, like my
Yeah.
totems end up going to the right.
Yeah, when I played Shaman, I'm like very, very.
And this
wary.
is a very rare circumstance. I probably am attacking his minion here to protect my little guy though.
Your little guy. You mean your commander?
And the little guy. Like it's like he can only kill one or the other this way, unless he wants to like really stagger the norm. This is a pretty again. I talk about deviations from the norm. This is again another one. The times you attack your opponent's minions are when it's extremely valuable to do so. Not just when it's profitable. Like if I have a Chillin' Yeti and my opponent has a Keeper, and there's nothing else going on, I'm attacking his face. But if I have something like a 4-2 on the board, it's important to protect it.
Well, does it change based on what's in our hand too? I mean, we've got such a great
Yeah,
hand
I
too.
mean the context
so-
of your hand is always pretty important. That is
Ooh.
sort of an interesting play.
Ooh, this is kind of.
I would probably tend to ignore it, honestly, because our hand's so strong. Like, I'd probably just charge the Druid of the Claw at him. Just because it's so much damage. Like, he's taking
Yeah, just
14
14.
damage to develop a Sylvanas that doesn't actually die this turn.
I mean,
Where shall I strike?
It's likely he could.
It's
Does he use Wrath?
no, but it's pretty tough for him, I think, to get something done here. Like, if he wants to attack with the Savants and Wrath it, that's something we're just going to have to live with the consequences of.
Okay, this is actually pretty good for us. Oh, and a Wrath, too. Oh my god, this is so good.
So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Are you looking for
Yeah.
the finish here? You don't quite have it.
No, I would use Azure Drake.
Well, we're gonna remove.
Yeah, use Azure Drake, and that's 4 extra damage. Oh, do you just want to wrap? You want? I see what you're
I
doing.
was like, remove it and then just leave the Azure Drake on the board.
This is why
right?
thinking is important.
Yeah. It's a pretty strong chunk. We draw a card and we draw 2 cards on this turn.
Yeah, I was thinking about everything to go over this turn, and my instinct was Azure Drake and try to figure because I just wanted to push 4 more damage through, but I suppose that clearing and leaving ourselves with a 4/4 slide.
If we had the combo, I'd definitely do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But should we
Yeah,
just
you're
go-
right.
Yeah.
I really want to punch his face for 4, but I guess it's just not happening.
Yeah, I think this is a
Trade
little
and
better.
Wrath.
Yeah. That Sylvanos can be problematic.
Draw charge. Drew to the charge.
Oh, Scenarios? That's
I wanted a Drew to the charge so bad.
yeah, that was true to the charge. Wild growth, yes.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Turn 8 and turn 9 Wild Growth are actually proven to be the 2 best times to cast them.
Ignore what he just said. Oh.
Does it get us in trouble? Or
Oh,
cards
no.
like this?
Oh
But
boy.
I think it still should be fine.
Okay.
That's a little
got it.
scary, but it's game over.
Yeah, we got it. GG.
Told you turn 8 Wild Growths were the best.
For the wild.
All right. Well, that's best case scenario, guys. I mean, we had a really nice mana curve there.
That's Druid.
That is Druid in general, but we've struggled through it the first 2 turns. Why don't we?
I mean, that's the way you're going to draw sometimes, but that's the difference between the strongest play and the weakest play is the ability to when you're struggling is to keep your cool and play as best you can and hope that things work out as you intend them to.
True.
Because if you're gonna quit every time you're behind, you're gonna quit like easily 50% of your games.
Yeah.
You
gotta
pick those up.
You gotta give yourself that small percent chance to win because sometimes you'll pull it out, and so making proper play, giving yourself any kind of line to win is important. That's what the top players do.
Right. I mean, that's different. That's honestly the difference between being a professional and being a guy who plays ladder really well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that professionals win around the 57 to 60% overall mark, and that seems like a really small amount.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of like from a certain perspective it is, but being able to win 60% of your games in a card game where realistically you should only be winning like 50%, really, I mean that's that's
It's
the
huge.
entire game.
No, it's huge.
Yeah, that's like it's pretty. There's a lot of games that are that close too. Like I remember Warcraft 3. One of my friends was like a pseudo Warcraft 3 professional, and he was winning like 60% of the time. And
Yeah.
he's like, I'm not even that good. The best players in the world win like 65, 67%.
Wow.
I was like, that's it.
I
And
know,
that was
it's not.
that was way before I understood like how large of a margin that actually was.
Yeah, it's definitely huge. So why don't we do this? So you want to talk about a second Druid deck?
Yep.
And why don't we play a game or two with the second Druid? And let me bring it up real quick.
Honestly, playing a game with it is pretty much like play the other Druid deck.
Yeah.
Because all your decisions in that deck are pretty straightforward. I think it's much more important in that deck to talk about why you play that deck and what it means.
Okay.
So with this
you wanna
list,
continue?
there's
Okay.
a lot of large changes to note. The main one being 2 copies of Ancient of War, a Ragnaros, and a Healing Touch. So this deck is much more geared around beating decks that are just gonna like kind of ignore what you do and try to implement their own game plan. A deck like Zoo and a deck like Miracle Rogue.
Okay.
So there's 2 schools of thought on attacking Miracle Rogue. The first one is charge at them a lot, which is what I like to do. And the second one is place so many taunts that they have to invest so much damage into actually killing your stuff
Yeah.
that you can keep yourself out of range of it, and then just poke them down in the meantime. Because a lot of their damage comes from using their dagger. So like against a deck like Druid, they'll take like 3 damage or 4 damage or whatever have you. And after a couple of those, you can get them in range to force combo them.
So why no Mark of the Wild in this deck?
Mark of the Wild is just kind of clunky, and I don't think there's room for it. Like I felt like when I played this list that there was not a single card that I wanted to change really. Like you'll notice there's actually not a big game hunter in here.
Right.
This deck does not do well in a format where handlock is very popular.
Okay.
Even if you just added a big game hunter to this list, it just wouldn't. It just doesn't work. So that's why I don't even have a big game hunter in here, and I would recommend not even trying one, is because the only way you typically beat them is either they falter and you have a Force Nature combo,
Yeah.
or you manage to pick off a giant with a Ragnaros and it doesn't get Siphon Sold.
Yeah.
So
Well, the
about-
good news is that the handlock isn't crazy popular, at least right now in the early seasons, where a lot of aggro decks seem to be running rampant on the ladder, at least in these
Right.
lower ranks.
Yeah, so Mark of the Wild in this deck, it just was like, in addition to not having room for it, this deck was so strong on curve the entire step of the way, because notice you have 4 7s,
Yeah.
and you also have an 8. And you have, like, your 5 is pretty cluttered. Like, you just don't have time to ever play it. And your only real targets are Keeper of the Grove and Harvest Golem. So, like, I did initially have a Mark of the Wild in here, but Sun Fury Protector just ended up being better every single time I played it.
Okay.
Just because of the 2/3 body was important.
Yeah, just having that option to play it on turn 2 and pressure classes like a Paladin, right? Classes that don't deal with those early minions very well.
Yeah, just 2/3s are important.
Yeah. Okay, well, should we play one, or we still have time for like one more game?
Yeah,
so-
if you want to play one, it's fine. Explaining it first was so important because your
Okay.
playstyle with this is going to change pretty drastically. It's a very different
Yeah.
curve.
And that, I mean, it explains to you just the dynamic of the Druid class itself. You can have
that being said, I do want to touch on the fact that today we've played against, was it 2 Paladins and a Shaman? I would not be playing this deck against Paladins, and I would not be playing it against Shamans because you rely so much on Ancient of War to pull some value.
Yeah.
Against cards like Earthshock and against cards like Equality, you end up taking a big hit.
Okay, so let's talk about Hunter. Hunter, we've got the mid-range Hunter, right, which we've seen from guys like Reynad, but there's also the trap aggressive type of Hunter. What do we do? Do we keep 1 Wild Growth? Do we keep 2 Wild Growths here?
I don't think I've ever mulliganed to Wild Growth.
Okay.
Whoa, hang on.
Alright, do we keep anything else? though?
There's something to note. It's like, let's just talk about our plays. So, like, if we turn 1 Wild Growth, we'll have 3 mana on turn 2. Let's say you Wild Growth again. You'll have 5 mana on turn 3, and then you'll have 6 mana
On turn-
on turn 4 and
4.
7 mana on turn 5. So if instead we go turn 2 Wild Growth, and then Wild
Right.
Growth again, we'll have Ancient Allure off the coin.
So keep it.
Wait, do 3 into 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I would keep the Ancient Allure.
Oh, that's so crazy.
This card is often used to heal in this matchup as well. Just having a 5/5 body is usually
Oh
more than
my
enough to get
God.
the job done.
Okay, so here's the discussion of coining into Wild Growth or not. And we'll see what we draw next, but
Our plan right now is to turn 2 Wild Growth so that we can coin the Ancient Allure after a second Wild Growth. So I would probably be sticking to that plan.
all right, so pass.
Yeah, I would tend to pass here.
All right, got that Force of Nature back from the mulligan. Okay,
Solid.
so this is mid-range, which tends to do pretty good against this deck. So, but well, maybe not this particular one. All right, going Wild Growth.
Yeah, I definitely would Wild Growth in here.
That Wrath is actually not a bad card.
I think it's an important draw right now. Force of Nature in this deck also, it very often is used as a what's the word I'm looking for? It's very often used as just a removal effect.
All right, so Wild Growth Wrath.
You need to think through everything. You actually have a lot of plays here,
Yeah.
so you need to make sure we think through
That
everything.
too. I don't think this deck runs like a deadly shot, so I don't think we have to worry about Sinjin just completely being removed easily, outside of like a kill command, actually. Kill command could be pretty bad.
I would tend to stick to our original plan.
Yeah, I think that
Yep.
it's going to be too much damage if I don't remove it.
I
too.
agree.
So Wild Growth. And then we'll wrath that 4-2.
I agree.
Gotta get some cards soon anyways from the... Well, actually, we still gonna stick to healing, or are we gonna probably card draw with this, given that it's mid-range?
It depends on what's happening.
Oh man, this is rough.
It's not a bad one. It's not a very good one,
Just
though.
not this turn, though. Be nice if we had 2 coins.
Yeah, I'd probably go with the keeper here.
Alright, so
I'm sorry with the ancient lore.
Still,
Yeah,
just
out of
keep
it.
with the ancient. And we draw.
I'm tending to draw here because I think Innervate's a really important card to draw.
God, we're gonna be down to 12 here.
Job's done.
Even 10 with the hero power.
Yep. This mid-range hunter was what kept Druid out of the format for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, this is when Miracle started to become popular, is that when this deck was just like an unstoppable force.
Yeah.
Because if it didn't have this draw, it had the possibility of turn 4 Buzzard Unleash. And that, since that's not a thing anymore, this deck has become much weaker. And just even before, like, across the rest of your turns, having the 1 extra mana from Unleash really made this deck a huge force to be reckoned with. So
Yeah.
getting to this point, it's like this was the true power draw of this deck, though. Was having minions into a Houndmaster, because Houndmaster is such an extreme amount of value.
Yeah.
But this deck also, this is part of the reason why Black Knight found its way back into Druid decks. So this isn't a deck that I would expect to see out very often in the metagame. And that we've run into it with this kind of draw, I think, is pretty unfortunate. I don't think
Yeah, we're
there's
pretty much
a game
dead,
in
right?
this game.
Yeah. So let's just concede.
Yep.
And
See.
we'll
Well played.
we'll take some questions at this point. I think we've gone for a while here. Some really good games. Hopefully, you guys have learned a ton going through these games with me and Admirable.
The basis behind this deck, again, this is not a deck that I want to be playing right now in this format. This is
Yeah.
a deck you want to play when stuff like Zoo and Miracle Rogue is like the decks that you play against so often that it's hard to combat those. So when it's hard to fight those, that's when taunts become really powerful, is because your opponent has to invest so much in actually killing him, because everything they dedicate to their deck is about just dealing damage, and most of the damage they deal is through minions. They don't have a lot of tricks. They don't have a lot of like overbearingly powerful giant turns to do. Like, Miracle Rogue's powerful in that it draws a ton of cards and then has an 18-point burst, but it's like outside of 2 saps, they don't really have anything to deal with taunts, and a lot of those lists have even cut to 1 sap.
Right.
So that should influence a lot more also. It's a deck to think about if you really just want to beat Zoo and Miracle that bad.
Okay. Well, we got a few questions already on Twitter. Again, guys, if you want to tweet us your questions, go ahead and do that at ChanManV. So Jamie Laney asks, I only have 1 Force of Nature. Do I have to craft a second one, or can I replace it maybe with a Leroy? Thanks.
I think replacing it with a Leroy for now is fine, but if you find yourself in a spot where you're coming up a few points of damage short, you might want to swap over to another Force of Nature.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't disenchant Leroy for it, though. Do not do that.
No, definitely do not. Leroy's too important in a bunch of decks right now. Civil Masks asks, can you explain your decision to play Yeti over Sinjin?
Yeah. In the first deck, I'm assuming it's the one you were talking about. Yeti, it just ends up being a threat more often than not. Like, the extra power makes a big difference. With Senjin, you're kind of leaving yourself vulnerable to Black Knight in a deck where you don't really want to be taunting very much. And the major reason behind it is how the combat interaction actually ends up working if you're playing Senjin and your opponent's playing Yeti. So if I play Senjin and you play Yeti, and you attack my Senjin in hero power, I can no longer hero power your Yeti. I have to have a Keeper of the Grove, or I have to have a Wrath, or I have to have another minion. So the combat math ends up stacking a lot against you. And then the other reason is because the extra point of damage really matters. Like, if just getting in 1 extra attack with a Chillwind Yeti has dealt a lot of times 2 extra damage because your opponent attacks your Yeti back so much.
That's true.
So that damage ends up, even though it's incremental, it ends up adding up to a lot at the end of the game. And it's just, I can't tell you how many times my opponent's been at exactly 14 after I keep attacking with Yeti turn after turn. So the major difference is just the increase in power, I think, is worth it. I think if you're able to combat aggressive minion strategies well enough that you don't need Senjin Shieldmaster, but if you find yourself struggling against those decks, I certainly don't mind swapping it out for temporary purposes.
Okay, Zulu Plumber asks, I got rank 3 over a weekend with the Savage War token deck last season. Have you ever tried it?
Yeah, I've tried a lot of Token. I think Token's a fine version. Token, I think, is actually pretty solid when Miracle's a very popular deck.
Yeah.
The times I don't really like Token are when people are just playing very standard Druid decks. In my opinion, it doesn't do very good in the Druid mirror. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I think the sacrifice of power on the Violet Teacher being your 4-drop instead of it being Chill One Yeti makes all the difference in the world.
Really? Okay.
I think so. Again, if I have a Chill One Yeti and you have a Violet Teacher, like, I'm winning.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
think-
usually the Violet Teacher... I mean, a lot of times the Violet Teacher isn't played on turn 4, right? It's played on turn 6 instead.
My philosophy behind well, that's even more to the point, is that now I just have a stronger 4-drop than you do, unless you have stuff to back up your 4-drop. Like, my 4-drop operates on its own, and you're actually having to rely on other things.
True.
Which relying on other things isn't a bad thing. I just think it's a consistency issue, and I'd rather be playing Chill One Yeti.
Okay. Papita69 asks, what do you think of replacing 1 or 2 commanders with Sunwalkers? Charge is nice, but sometimes you need the larger body and taunt.
I think at that point you're just taking a different direction.
Yeah.
With the purpose of Argent Commander being in there is to be able to pressure your opponents out of the game. And the second reason it's in there is because the first version of Druid that we played actually, in my opinion, has an advantage against Handlock. And one of the reasons it has such an advantage is because you can just punch all their stuff. Like, you can literally kill every single minion they play at a certain point in the game. So you just stay above 20, they can't burst you, and you sort of pigeonhole them into making poor decisions the whole game. And they end up doing something like Siphon Souling, like a 4/5 or whatever, to have to stay alive, and you can just continue to pressure
Is that
them.
true? I mean, like, what if they get the giants up? I mean, you're going to run out of minions to punch those big giants with eventually.
Arch Commander does a very good job at punching minions, especially giants, because it's just absorbing 8 points of damage.
Okay.
So it's dealing 4, and it's basically like playing a 4/10 charge for 6 mana.
Yeah.
It's just that particular matchup. Argent Commander pulls a lot of weight, and then just more so to the point is that the whole purpose of that deck is just to literally charge your opponent down. So just putting him down and attacking for 4 is often way more important than having the extra health and taunt.
Okay. Let's see. Pyrofoxable. We'll take 3 more. Pyrofoxable, Earth Elemental plus Ancestral Spirit plus Faceless. Your opinion. So bored of the same Shaman deck for 6 months.
That's sort of... I mean, it'll work when your opponent doesn't have anything, but if your opponent has like a silence, it becomes such a horrible spot to be in. And the problem with this combo isn't that this is a bad combo. The problem is that these cards individually are not the strongest cards.
Yeah.
So like Ancestral Spirit is just, it's okay, and I can imagine spots where it's really good. But Earth Elemental is so vulnerable to things. Like it gets hit by both Big Game Hunter and Black Knight, which is the
2 flex
card
cards.
that a lot of decks play, and it's vulnerable to both of them. And then more to the point is that the decks that play those cards are very often Druid, so you just end up getting silenced on a lot of these things in addition to that. So since Druid is such a large portion of the metagame, you end up hurting yourself, and then Earth Elemental also doesn't function very well against Sap. So just all of those things are sort of working against you. It's like why isn't Priest very good? And I think the reason Priest isn't very good is because aggressive minion strategies are so prominent. And I think until Priest is able to fight those off with the right Priest tools, that it's going to continue to remain a poor deck. So sort of your combo here is becoming a victim of the development of the game and where people see what people see as the best strategies, and then how they choose to use that information.
Yeah, a lot of it too, just to add my little point, is that we're talking about combo cards. Those are like particular cards that are that you have to, they can't do anything by themselves, like Admirable was saying, and Ancestral Spirit's one of those. So if you get too many of those, then you're gonna end up with hands that are just completely dead, and those kind of hands you'll just have like almost a 0% winning percentage. When those kind of things happen, where if you limit those kind of combo cards, you can up that percentage just a tiny bit, right? But in regards to Shaman, I have seen some of those decks where it has ancestral healing, right, with the injured Blade Master, that sort of stuff, or even Ancestral Spirit with that, and you see some of those type of decks that are a little bit different than your standard Shaman, and can be strong every once in a while. Again, it lacks consistency, but it can be fun too to play if you want to try that out. All right, Jonathan Fly asks, does Lore Walker Cho have a place in any kind of constructed deck? It's such a fun card. I'd love to make it work.
I actually played Lore Walker Cho in a zoo deck.
Yeah, we saw it in Zoo
Yeah,
deck,
I did it after
recently.
seeing Sixo play with it, and I was actually pretty impressed with it. Its goal, I think, was to fight Miracle Rogue, and that is exactly what Lore Walker Cho did every time I played him. I'd play it in the Miracle matchup, and one game I ended up with a Deadly Poison, a Sap, a Preparation, a Fanatize, and an
Wow.
Eviscerate.
Oh my god.
Because he had to like chain into a big thing of spells and hope to get things
Oh,
done.
and Gadget Zan, that kind of thing? Oh
Yeah,
my god.
and so he couldn't afford to kill Lore Walker Cho because it didn't pose like an actual board threat, so it ended up getting me enough cards to Miracle Warlock him.
So you played it later versus like that early.
I played it on, I think it was on like a turn 5. I played it along with a Harvest Golem.
Nice.
And then he sapped the Harvest Golem and kind of like did the rest of his stuff.
Yeah, it's tough.
I ended up dying that turn, but I got an Eviscerate, a Preparation, a Fanatize, and a Sap out of it, so I was more than happy.
I mean, Lore Walker Cho, it's crazy because it's kind of an implicit taunt in some degree, but it's a lower priority, or at least it forces your opponent to prioritize the abilities of Lore Walker Cho versus taking damage. And when you're facing Zoo, taking damage is usually the highest priority, right? So it's such a logical card in that deck. It's really cool.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And it just replaces the Shield Bearer. Like if you played Shield Bearer before, Lore Walker Cho is like essentially the same, except for a little bit more.
Lore Walker Cho is meant to punish people who are playing fewer minions, is what it's meant for.
Yeah.
It's not meant to just like it's not a combo card. It's like a punish card.
Okay, maybe this is the last one here. Red Ward's Lee asks, when opponent has a dominant board, how many spells or minions are worth a board clear? One for one or other, as I don't want to overcommit. How many spells or minions are...
That's a really tough
situational.
question.
Yeah, it's kind of a situational.
Yeah, that is so heavily weighted in context that it's really hard to answer. But I can go over a couple examples that I commonly find my students in that really help clarify things.
Okay.
So the situation I give is picture your opponent has a 4/4 and a 3/3 on the board, and you have the option to either play Chillwind Yeti or swipe. And the rest of the turns, like you don't have any other spells. It's just swipe and then minions. And a lot of times they answer swipe. But swiping ends up being, in my opinion, the wrong play here for a number of reasons. And in order of them, it's because the first one is that what you end up doing is you find yourself in a position where if you swipe your opponent's minion, they just play another minion, and then you're in the exact same position next turn.
Yeah.
The only difference is that you've used your swipe and that you've taken some extra damage. And the second one is that it doesn't give you the potential for a big swing turn. So a lot of times what you have to do is you have to invest yourself into being in a position where you're able to get value out of things. And you have to do that by paying life totals. Like, there's just no way to get around it. You have to pay life totals sometimes. So what you need to do is you need to develop minions to get value out of their attack potential, and then follow up with swipe to swing the board back in your favor. Because the idea is to try to take initiative from your opponent. So you're only trying to get value out of your stuff. So if you find yourself in a spot where your options are play a minion and take some damage, or use your lone removal spell, tend to lean towards playing the minions. Because if you use your removal spells and your opponent has another minion, you're going to find yourself in pretty much the exact same spot that you were just in. And if your opponent doesn't have a minion, what that means is they get a couple points of damage out of their minion, then your minion kills their minion, and then you play another minion, and then they don't have any more minions. So it's a win-win sort of situation, and you prevent yourself from falling into big pitfalls when you kind of are going over those motions. So tend to use minions before you use removal, if it's a possibility for you to do so.
And that advice, guys, is probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that you can give to people just starting out or just even at the lower ranks.
It's a good piece of
I mean,
advice.
it's
that,
like
honestly,
really important actually.
I'd hate to
learn
interrupt
that.
you here,
Yeah.
but it's a good piece of advice to give to a lot of professionals that I see too. Because
Oh,
frankly, a lot of
ouch.
like I'm not going to name names, but a
Yeah.
lot of people make that mistake, and even I've been victim of it myself. Is that you panic and you play a removal spell before you play a minion, and then your opponent just plays another minion, and you're like, why did I do that? And then some people still think that those plays are still the right play, and it's just not. Like you have to be getting some value out of your cards because the idea is that you want to get your stuff developed and then go from there. Shots, I didn't even name anyone but myself. RTX.
It's funny. No, but again, guys, I mean, I'm really glad you answered it that way, Admirable, and you brought that up because again, it's huge bit of advice there. But that's going to be it, guys. We're going to wrap up the show. It's been a great episode with you, Admirable. I'm glad we finally got a chance to get you on. And isn't he a great coach, guys? I mean, this guy, he's very articulate with just giving kind of the rationale behind each of these moves. So it's a real pleasure, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
But do you want to give some shout outs, plugs, maybe even talk about like your coaching and that sort of thing?
If you guys are interested in private coaching, you can send me a message on Twitch, and I'll get back to it with some more details on coaching. I've been really busy lately, so I haven't been really getting to too much different stuff in terms of where to actually go with all my time because it's been spent working on projects and kind of going through things and so on and so forth. But if you send me an inbox, I will get to it at some point with some more details on it. And if you guys are interested in seeing more of me play, you can follow me on Twitter at ThatsAdmirable, Twitch is ThatsAdmirable, and Facebook is ThatsAdmirable.
Awesome. And I will my shout outs obviously to you for coming on the show, Admirable, and for all of you guys that came and watched. We're going to be doing this each and every Monday. I'm going to try to get all the folks that are kind of associated with certain decks because they're just so good at them. But in general, we're just going to have pros come on and walk us through decks. And again, just continually kind of coach me through them. And hopefully you guys can learn some tips through that. You can find the VODs on youtube.com/ChanManV. I'll probably get them up in an hour or so. I unfortunately got to kind of run somewhere right after this. But they'll definitely be up tonight, and I'll tweet it. You can follow me on Twitter too. It's on both of our Twitters are on the overlay at ChanManV here. And follow the channel too if you enjoyed this show. We got Valley Town coming up on Thursday and Deck Wars on Wednesday. And you can actually check that out on twitch.tv/Machinima. That's going to be it for Pro Corner. So for That's Admirable and ChanManV, we'll see you next week. Later.
See ya.